Hey, welcome back to another episode of Dynamics Corner. This is a very special episode at Directions. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on April 29th, 2026. Kris. Here we are at Directions North America. And with us today, we have the opportunity to speak with a special guest, Mike Morton.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you about Business Central.
And yeah, thank you guys. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And one thing that we noticed in the keynote is that Business Central has grown to over 55,000 installations. Can you tell us a little bit about the growth of Business Central?
Yeah, I mean, it's been just really continuous strong growth. It's when we started, growing from a very small number to growing a little bit more, is maybe not sort of too surprising, but having the over the years, each 2021, 2022, 2023, we kind of, always sort of assumed there was going to be a slowdown that eventually, and we've just continued to see sort of the opposite. We've seen kind of acceleration and growth, and just really pleased with sort of the progress that we have in the product. I will say that I am a bit greedy. And so despite the growth, what does it take to get to 100,000 or 200,000 or 400, and so we are thinking big, but certainly the momentum is great. We continue to see really strong, great positive feedback from customers.
That's great. And a lot of customers use it. Have you noticed any particular markets or regions that have had the significant growth over the past year?
Yeah, the growth rates are relatively sort of consistent. We've always, had our strongest success in Europe. And so for, here at Directions North America, it is the biggest market for Business Central, the US being obviously sort of the biggest economy. But we are seeing some sort of progress here. And so if we could, try to get, even in the US, it's hard to even talk about it as sort of one market because it's such a big country and sort of different sort of parts of, and so I think that certainly the US is sort of a huge opportunity. And then if you kind of go outside the US, South America and Asia are certainly really two great growth vectors for us. And they haven't been as traditionally sort of strong as sort of some of these other, as the US and in Europe, and both of them, we did see there's a bunch of people from South and Central America here at the conference, and we look forward to doing more in those locations.
Excellent. I think in 2026, I don't think that you can go 1 minute without hearing the word AI. And I know that Business Central over the past several years has also introduced a number of AI features. And even at the conference, it was announced that the expense agent will be available this year as well. Where do you see the position of AI within Business Central, and what other areas you think that AI will be added, or features and functions for it?
Yeah, one thing that I will say is that, here at this partner conference, we're saying AI front and center. That's the focus, the number one most important thing. I think that when we're in front of a bunch of customers, we'll talk about things differently. We'll talk about, how are they actually going to get their jobs done more efficiently? How are they going to be able to grow their businesses faster? How are they going to be able to do things they couldn't do before? Where AI is obviously going to be a huge supporting sort of part of that. And so I think the message, we come on very strong here because we're such foundational believers that the technology is just going to completely change the art of what's sort of possible. And so it is kind of interesting that when the message at this conference, I think is super clear. If you're a partner, you need to be using AI for your work. You need to be prepared to sort of get customers there. And then I think with customers, we're going to talk in different terms. We're going to be like, hey, how can you make it, faster to route your goods to the right place? Or how can you be more efficient about getting the right tools? Or how can you be more efficient about, responding to customer requests in an efficient manner? And I think we'll have a very different language.
I agree, and I see that. And you talk about the efficiencies. So customers that are looking to use the application, you talked about the story or the messaging that you give them, how they become more efficient and how they can use and work with Business Central in their business. What are some other areas that they can use the application to become more efficient, and how about scalability and growth within the application?
Yeah, it is interesting. A lot of our, Dimitri actually had a fantastic slide on the end of his day too, where there's sort of, AI to help make the things you already do, more efficient. But then there's potentially this huge category of things that you never would have, potentially thought to have done in sort of the very, very first place, right? And so I have a brother that does an awning company, and he has all sorts of typical stuff of responding to sales requests and invoices and vendor payments and all those kinds of things. But what if AI could make it so when somebody says, "Hey, I'm interested in an awning," and it could respond right there with a visualization of the awning at the location, with their logo. And he does that today, but he already he only does that after being under some contract or some business development. Can you actually build new business by actually doing things that would otherwise be sort of very, very costly to do? And so I think it's a real opportunity to actually increase growth. And so I think you're going to look at us, yes, things like expenses, payables, that's about reducing costs. But I think you're going to see a lot more investment about how companies can actually do things they never imagined they can do before.
No, that's great.
That's great.
It's great. It's
It's very exciting.
No, it's a lot of exciting. I've been working with the application for quite some time. I'm passionate about the application, and I like to see the growth, and I like to see the features and functionality that are being added to it. And with customers just starting out with AI, I know it's challenging sometimes for them to adopt AI in their organization and to sort of navigate the waters of how do I start? How do I begin? So, what are some of your suggestions for customers or even partners who are just starting their journey, how to take advantage of AI within their organization, whether from implementing Business Central from a partner helping someone or a customer being able to capitalize on these features?
Yeah. So I'll start with, you first need to just ensure you have access to the tools. And really the most fundamental tool for that is M365 Copilot from Microsoft. There are you can use ChatGPT and other kinds of things, but you're going to want the enterprise version. Because if you're using the consumer tools, you're not getting the best capabilities, like if you're actually not using the sort of the paid versions of these sort of tools. And certainly with M365 Copilot, the integration with all the Microsoft Graph, your mail, your calendar, your Teams, et cetera, sort of really makes that powerful. And then from there, I sort of half joked, but was very half serious. Just tell it your problem. Like what are you trying to do? Don't really overthink it. And you'll often might tell it, very silly things like, I'm trying to build a house. And like, well, I'm not expecting the AI to physically go and build the house out for me, but it might actually come and sort of discover all those kinds of things. Or maybe you're saying, I'm, trying to, expand the reach of my peanut farm or whatever the kind of thing is. And so, what is it? What are the actual sort of tasks that you're actually trying to do? For partners, like the example that I give is sort of very simple. Go to one of these tools and say, hey, I have customer named XYZ. They're running, GP, version whatever. They want to move over, help, and sort of go from there. And you might be surprised at where that conversation leads, not just in terms of conversation, but actually in tools. It may end up building data migration tools, finding the right ISVs, helping to convert. If you're coming from NAV, CAL to AL, or converting code solutions, might create documentation. And so I think the part of it is really having a little bit of that sort of leap of faith of describing what you want to, not what you want to do, like what you want to accomplish, and having it actually help you get there.
So don't overthink.
Yeah. Don't overthink from the beginning. And so I don't want to downplay the huge amount of human intelligence involved there. And so it still is going to require a lot of sort of ingenuity, but start the conversation, just like you would be sort of working with another human, having that context is critical, right? And so if you sort of do think about describing it as if you were to, describe it to a friend, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, here's what I sort of need. And then, you can refine, sort of go along those ways. But don't, maybe overthink might be the term, but don't hesitate might be another way. Get started, try it out. And if it gives you a terrible answer, then fine, move on to sort of the next task. But really, see what happens, jump in.
Yes, I think, as you had mentioned, starting with a simple task is sometimes the best way to start. I know when I started my journey, that's how I got started. So it blossoms from there.
The other advice that I gave too, and I kind of showed this a little bit in my keynote, is if you can find challenges that are simpler, they could be in your personal life, in your work life, or whatever, that let you see what can be done with these tools, then they can inspire you. And so a classic coding one would be, 6 months ago, people were like, hey, it's great for writing, prototype code on non-big code bases, but this is never going to work for, big, complicated sort of solutions. And when people actually did it for these simpler things, they're like, wow, this is so incredible. How can I make it work for big, complicated solutions? And so until you actually sort of spent the time to see it in sort of the cases that it does work, that's what's going to inspire you to try to really make it work in these sort of more complicated situations.
That's great. Uh, where do you see Business Central a year from now, 2 years from now, if someone were to, ask you randomly your thoughts on the application?
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a decent amount of transition of people spending less time in the depths of the app where you're going and filling out these fields and navigating in these sort of more complicated ways, and doing things in a much more natural format where I upload the invoice and it does everything that you want, and then maybe you help correct or answer sort of the specific conversations versus the way that I start by I go to this tool and fill out this field and that field and this field and that field. And so I think you're going to see, call it an evolution, call it a revolution, but a pretty significant change in terms of how users interact. And so it's not necessarily all natural language. And so you will see scenarios where I can just type what I want to do, but I think you'll also see cases, like the expense where you just snap it with your phone and things kind of go down sort of a different path. And so I think the UI path is going to be pretty significant. I do always want to remind folks, we are very committed to the VC UI. So we are not going to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to continue to invest in having a great experience. And in fact, AI is going to allow us to build a better UI, than we ever could with some of the tools that we have. And so we really want to try to, bring together the best of both.
That's great. Thank you. That's some things I wonder and I think about is how the user interface will change almost to where maybe an ERP application could almost be faceless or headless.
Yes.
And you can have tools work together from other agencies or applications to be able to communicate with each other. Do you see any of that in the future?
I do. I mean, we've talked about that. Salesforce made a big announcement about Headless. We've had others. I do expect, more and more of the interactions will be from, the other tool, the tools people use, whether that's, Teams or Outlook or M365 or just even Ambient, where you're, and the pace and the rate at which that goes is going to be interesting. I think some people predict that's going to happen very, very rapidly. Some think it's going to take more time. ERP is a little bit unique in that, it really does have to be right and accurate. But I do think that you're going to see, I don't love the term headless. I just don't think it's the greatest term. But I think if you want to, maybe another way that I'd like to do it would be, if people can spend way less time doing the taxing parts, the data entry, the things that sort of, so really making that just come from the information we already have. What information do we have from your existing, documents or Teams, meeting recordings or from incoming emails, whatever it may be. And then how do we sort of, on the flip side, have ERP do more value, right? So ERP is, it's necessary today, but not necessarily people find it the thing that's like exciting them in their business. They're like, well, of course I have to do my accounting and I have to sort of manage my supply chain. And so I think you are going to see these scenarios where it's going to help you a little bit more on the creative side, right? How can I actually, take this data and figure out what action should I be doing? How can I, what new products should I build? What new offers should I have? How can I optimize the, supply chain? How do I optimize, how do I procure things better, whatever it may be?
That's great. It's I see a lot coming in for the product too. So, on the personal side, how are things going here in Orlando for you?
It's fun. I was kind of joking. I haven't really been outside the conference center. Looking forward to riding the Velocicoaster. Did I get that right? And going to Universal Studios this evening. I have family in Florida. I was actually in Tampa just a week and a half ago for our nephew's wedding. So I love it here in Florida. I love the nice weather, and it's a great.
No, I know it's nice. It must be tough with the travel. It's almost you can go everywhere but go nowhere in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You show up, you spend time.
Orlando is particularly, it's so spread out. It's not like you go to Orlando and you kind of need to go to Disney or whatever, but it's just kind of walk around.
That's good. That's great. Well, Mike, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. Any minute you spend with us or spend with anyone, it's the minute that you don't get back, because time truly is the currency of life. So we really do appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate it. And, thank you to everybody that attended the event. And, I think I saw the poll at the end of today's keynote. The number one reason people come is for the people. And so appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, matalino.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.